couple weeks ago, I revisited Skyrim and Fallout 4.
16 times the detail.
I did not just revisit them to play them again, but rather because I wanted to gain more insight into what was it that actually made me love these games so much. Was it the story, the writing, the freedom to do whatever you wanted to do, the characters I met along the way? I didn't know. Everyone labels this mysterious fondness they grow as the Bethesda magic, because even though dated mediocrity is what these games seem when you view them from a paper, there's just something ambiguous about them either way, which everyone seems to love. That unchallenged sense of warmth and embrace hurtle towards you the second you enter their worlds. It's puzzling, truly. However, during my recent reacquaintances and time with these games, with a more focused approach, I realized this mysterious aspect to Bethesda games is not really mysterious at all. It's something very apparent, but just very easy to miss and not value. It's also why I adore experiences like The Witcher 3 and Red Dead Redemption 2. It's why I love wandering around in video game worlds. The exploration. From the discoveries you uncover while traveling from Riverwood to Whiterun, to the memories and environmental stories you experience throughout the world, or even the weird interactions that may befall you, it is the explorative quality and detail that has made Bethesda games so believable, immersive, and most importantly, loved. See, on the other hand, Starfield isn't just another Bethesda title. It's not just Skyrim in space, because it fails at exactly that, at exactly what I talked about, at exactly the exploration and world that has made the magic inside those previous games. And unfortunately, after inputting almost a grueling 200 hours, I can confidently say it fails hard. Let's start from what many don't start from: the world of Starfield. Bethesda has prided Starfield's NASA-punk age as the golden era of space exploration and travel, where it was not only in constant exponential growth, but also filled with risks and frontiers to discover. With over 1,000 planets, it made sense for it to have an ambitious universe, one in constant turmoil. It was clear the tone for the setting and universe was being portrayed as a gritty and conflict-filled space, but also one which was pushing the idea of hope and exploration, led by an era where potential and prospect for adventures to the far frontiers was only increasing. So is all of this lore and past reflected inside of what you actually experience during your time with the game? Of course not. And this brings me to my first point. The universe that you're actually meant to be exploring is really fucking boring and static. In the settled systems, there is almost nothing you can find, you can do, you can discover, you can resonate with, because even though on paper it seems like the setting will be interesting and fun to explore, it ends up just being boring. The entire world here feels static and bare bones. See, Starfield's universe is so sanitized and too goody shoes in a manner that it feels like a PG-13 game rather than anywhere near close that mature rating it has obtained. Every single faction, every single person, every single activity in Starfield is morally good in a sense. Yes, even the Crimson Fleet, the pirate faction, who by the way are not presented in a serious manner, but rather a little club who steals some things occasionally. This lack of real diverse morality makes the world void of any immersion and groundedness. Which is funny and ironic in a sense, because creating interesting universes is what Bethesda has been good at for all these years. Worlds that were filled to the brim with fascinating and compelling world building. Worlds that made you engaged. Adding on to this injury, a great many aspects of the world are just illogical and senseless. Apparently, the settled systems are supposed to be populated with tens of millions of people, but yet there's only 4 main cities, which are all far too small to house more than a few thousand people, even when combined together. There's New Atlantis, which is far too small for a capital city of a faction that wields power at an interstellar level. There's Aquila City, where Freestar Collective lives in the same shit-stained, unpaved fort from the 1600s. There's Neon, which is meant to be this dangerous bastion of crime and illegal activity. And finally, Sidonia, which has 2 bars and a few trade shops with absolutely nothing else to see. Even the vacation resort, Paradiso, is just a hotel with a beach. The world here is genuinely so lazy, unrealistic, watered down from the original potential, and illogical, it makes you laugh. You may ask, why make it so fucking boring when Bethesda already has so much opportunity and potential? And well, the answer is, it's something. Let me introduce you to Emil, the lead writer himself behind Starfield. In his keynote at a conference, he gives light to his writing methods and the rules he follows for creating worlds and narratives. During his conference, he stated his #1 rule. What is it? To keep the writing as simple as possible. Yes, he thinks complex stories are not only a waste of time, but you, the players, are too stupid to understand them. Emil was already writing on the pre-written successes and world building of Skyrim and Fallout 4, worlds already created by other people, and when it was finally time for him to create his own new world, his lack of expertise and talent really do show. See, many argue Starfield's problems with exploration began at the soulless procedural generation and lack of technical ambition. But the truth is, those problems came after to really solidify and drive it into the dirt. Because where it truly starts from is really its core foundation, the universe, the sanitized and boring world of Starfield itself, and what comes after it only makes it all even worse. A few months ago, ahead of Starfield's release, I published a video titled Why Starfield's Procedural Generation Won't Suck. Inside, I talked about the methods and various tools Bethesda was utilizing to make their endeavor into a space title possible, including a hypothesis where I predicted Starfield's procedural generation would not suck. Was I wrong? Yes, I was wrong. Well, kind of. See, Bethesda has touted and invested a great amount of resources into making the 1,000 planet mark possible. And I mean, they are inside the game. In fact, more, almost 1,400 planets. Now, if I am being completely honest, I do believe that Bethesda has managed to make some genuinely diverse and beautiful environments, allowing them to not only color planets with different biomes all across their surface, but create distinct and contrasting spaces. Hell, I'll even go as far as giving them credit for possibly making the best procedural generation tech I've seen in a space game so far. Even the whole solar system here is fully simulated with full orbits. It's impressive for sure, but the problem isn't really with the quality of the technology they used, but the actual substance of what it offers to the core experience. Even though planets can be impressive at first glance, you also slowly realize how absolutely void and empty they are too. What truly mattered on these planets was left out. The content to fuel the exploration. The way Starfield's planets are supposed to work is by you picking a landing zone on the planet of your choice and then loading into that specific area, which then in return picks handcrafted points of interest created by the developers themselves and places it across the procedurally generated environment. There's supposed to be about 4 or 5, and you can then freely explore these handcrafted points of interest and the unique stories they may tell. On paper, it sounds fine, and the only main concern that depends on the success of this system is the quantity and quality of the points of interest themselves. I talked about this in my previous video, but if the quantity or quality of these interests were too low, then it would turn into a substantial problem for obvious reasons. But come on, Bethesda are kings of making interesting environments and locations to explore, so this couldn't have been a problem, right? Right? Not only is the overall quality low here, with extremely generic and meaningless locations to explore, but the fucking quantity is too. In the first 15 planets or so I visited, I found 5 identical locations which I had already seen before. And over time, I think that number has grown so exponentially big that I have lost track of it. It completely destroys any immersion and motivation to explore, especially when after walking 5+ minutes to these places, you only end up stumbling upon the exact same cookie cutter factory that you've already seen 300 light years away somewhere else. As soon as the first time this happens, the little belief of the world there is completely falls apart. You would expect one thing to sacrifice for the other, quality or quantity, but no, Bethesda couldn't put any substantial effort into this aspect of the game. I predicted that at least a solid 300 to 400 points of interest would be present to fuel the exploration. How many are there? 80, and about half of those are just slightly different variations to their existing models, where most of the models are also either just different types of bunkers, trade posts, or mining facilities. Not only that, they're locked behind levels. Yes, so if you are in a level 1 system, you won't see the same points of interest that you would in a level 100. That further technically reduces the number of locations to actually explore when you're in a certain level of a system. You can tell how absolutely disastrous this must feel in game. On top of that, because there is so many of the same type of generated locations, it makes the world feel small and uniform, like everywhere and anywhere is just the same old stuff, the same mining facilities, the same computers, the same people. There is no distinctiveness or uniqueness throughout the exploration you do of this world. No wonder why people think these points of interest and locations placed on the map are procedurally generated, because they are not only lazy but downright pathetic. I mean, imagine landing on a planet and seeing a giant crashed battleship in the distance, stretching along the horizon, which you could go and freely explore. But alas, there is nothing even comparable to that in the actual game. It's sad because the potential of this system was viable and was rather scrutinized by the chase for the 1,000 planets mark, something Todd desired a great amount. It's clear that Bethesda was attempting to fulfill Todd's dream of having vast explorable solar systems stretched out to interstellar levels with fully explorable planets inside. It's clear that the initial approach was of that of a survival game, with so much unnecessary detail in the hazard, radiation, fuel, and even survival systems. However, the team probably eventually realized Creation Engine isn't exactly possible for this, as they also have to support an RPG on top of everything. They drained far too much of their time doing things that mattered very little, and forgot to focus on the actual important things, the substance involved inside exploration. Imagine if Starfield only had a few solar systems, or hell, even one, where the individual planets could be given so much more attention, atmospheric value, and theme. Bethesda focused too much on the foundation and forgot to build the skyscraper itself. Now imagine this exploration in a boring world that's already with very little culture or theme, driven by pointless and fruitless procedural generation, now only to be paired with, drumroll please, want to enter your ship? Loading screen. Want to take off into space? Loading screen. Perhaps fly towards a planet? Loading screen. Want to travel more than a few kilometers on a planet? Well, there's no loading screen for that, but a whole boundary reached pop-up, like you're playing a Looney Toony Destiny. See, Bethesda didn't build a space game here. That's a lie. They built 6 different games and then just mashed them together hoping it worked. But in the end, ultimately, and not surprisingly, the end result presented is a disjointed mess, which feels like has no artistic nor technical goal or soul. Lodenfield wouldn't be an exactly inaccurate alternate title for the game, because it really is just that. This feeling is only further exemplified after playing experiences like Star Citizen, and with all of its own problems, the game not only has a complete absence of loading screens, but also an interwoven solar system shared with other players, which is so seamless that it's almost absurd. For example, the other day in Star Citizen, I began another session on board of a space station, orbiting this snowy, half-terraformed planet. I got up and called in my ship, requested to take off, and just like that, I was in space. Not a single loading screen. Then after that, I decided to venture down into the planet below me, directly into this giant and breathtaking city named New Babbage. All without a loading screen or cutscene. And then after that, I saw the spaceport at the edge of the metropolis, and right under it was a vehicle spawning station. So I flew in and landed directly beside it. And then I went inside and spawned in a hoverbike I owned. I got on and requested to depart, and just a few seconds later, I was right outside with my field of vision occupied, with snow breezing across the visor of my helmet. All without a loading screen. I then also saw a frozen lake right next to the city, so I drove right onto the lake and proceeded to go full speed at almost 730 kilometers per hour, admiring the view and really questioning to myself, how the hell is this even possible? See, Starfield has no moments that feel like the ones I've experienced in Star Citizen, unfortunately. And inside the game, you are constantly being reminded that you are in fact playing a video game. Everything in the world, or I shall say the explorable galaxy, feels centered around you, and not in a good way. It feels like this universe only exists in parts where you are, and this is such a step back from Skyrim, where not only did the world genuinely feel like it existed outside of you, but you felt powerful when making decisions, consequently changing the outlook of this whole world, not just something around you. Space is meant to exude a sense of mystery and contemplation of the prospect possible when looking out into the dotted light. But what Starfield ends up executing is a mockery of it all. The majesty of traveling through space and feeling the seamlessness of the universe with all of its celestial bodies intertwined between is completely absent. Star Citizen has one solar system, which feels and acts 100 times bigger than the whole universe inside of Starfield. All the effort here put into the ship customization and the shipbuilder is pointless, because it's just used as a dumbed down fast travel point anyway. It's like if you couldn't ride your horse in Red Dead Redemption 2, but you could put makeup on it in return. It's absurd. The beauty of landing on a planet isn't actually landing on it, it's the experience of seeing this giant ball of rock and flora come closer and closer and closer, making you realize the true scale and freedom of this thing lurking in the middle of nowhere. And not only that, but descending down into it, watching that small dot become a whole area that at second glance never seems to end, while seemingly and literally being presented with a whole another atmospheric experience. Passing through the clouds, seeing water particles hit your windshield, and the glamorous scenery filling your vision underneath. That's what makes travel feel like travel in a game trying to replicate a setting like this. A couple weeks ago, I actually watched Luke Steffen's review on the game as well, and there was something he said about the way exploration feels in Starfield that sticked with me.
Like I said, it grows all the more frustrating when you go out into the great unknown, trying to explore like previous Bethesda games, only to be greeted with invisible walls reminding you that you're in a glorified fishbowl and not actually exploring a planet.
And honestly, I struggled not to agree, especially with boundaries limiting you to a restricted area and the inability to use any ground vehicles or in-atmospheric flight at all. It feels tiny. However, I would also like to add on that it is not just the planets feeling like this, it's also the entire game, the space, the universe itself feel like fishbowls segmented into parts and separate from each other. Starfield feels like it tried to reach for the stars while forgetting about the space in between. In the end, a lack of a logical and immersive world, a procedural generation system that works against the explorative nature of the game, and finally, a lack of technical ambition makes Starfield's aspect of exploration, in a way, non-existent. It doesn't even really exist anymore. And unfortunately, this is not something that can be fixed with a few mods or a year of support. It's not like Cyberpunk 2077, which was already well done behind the covers of its technical disaster. Starfield's roots and problems go all the way to the base, the initial game design behind it, and until the game as a whole is dramatically remade or changed, which is not very possible at all, it will only be able to marginally improve with support or mods. It is heartbreaking to see Bethesda's best aspect and feature of their games become its worst. It is also distressing to think about what the Elder Scrolls 6 may be like if this is the type of game design that is being greenlit at the studio. If the studio does not enact big changes, I do not have very high hopes for the future. After all, Starfield's exploration is a disgrace, especially to what has come before it.
What's out there? Probably a cryolab. Disappointment. Abandoned research facility, probably a bunch of then some invisible wall. A loading screen. Sweet little lies.